Welcome in to another edition of House of Horns. My name is Victor Corona, aka Victor Producer. And as always, joining me is Gilbert Manzano, who does it for Sports Illustrated MMQB. Gilbert, we're here to preview the matchup, the NFC West matchup between the Los Angeles Rams, who sit at 3-4 as they travel up to take on the Seattle Seahawks, who are 4-4 and tie for the division lead. Uh, how I guess just to kind of get this started, is this a big game? Just kind of in week 9?
Yeah, well, first of all, people are probably seeing us here a little earlier than expected. A little change here, so hopefully that didn't throw people off there too much. So join us either here in the live comments, don't be shy, or let us know on the replay how you're feeling about Rams versus the Seahawks. So maybe because I'm not covering this game, but last week felt like a big time game. You heard the rumors about Cooper Cup. You heard little whispers and reportings about Puka Nacua being back. By the way, it's finally it's good to cover or talk about a game preview with Puka Nacua and Cooper Cup most likely going to play. Like we know that. So
Yeah, they're
no
not on
more
the injury report,
yeah,
so
no
that's a
injury
first.
stuff. No, will they play? Will they not play? No, talking about oh man, this Rams offense is not good. So for people that give us crap for being negative, nothing to be negative about
Yeah.
this week. There's these injuries are not that bad this week. There are some that Victor's going to break down in a bit, but it is a big time game. Maybe because again I'm not going to be in Seattle, but you look at the NFC West standings, it's a wide open race there. The Seahawks, blew their little bit of a lead that they had when they started out 3-0. They're 4-4. The 49ers are 4-4. And the Cardinals are 4-4. And then the Rams not too far behind at 3-4. So you get this win here. Uh, and you got the tiebreaker with the 49ers. So you're looking good with the Seahawks and the 49ers. You blew it against the Cardinals, but you played them again to even up the score. So all these divisional games are very important. The Seahawks got beat down by the Bills last week. They're a little bit they're kind of licking their wounds right now. So go ahead, catch them at a good time and take that victory.
Yeah, and I would assume this is that for me this is a big game for both teams just because, as you said, I mean, you want to make sure that you have some of those tiebreakers. And, we'll get into the history between these two teams, especially since Sean McVay has taken over for the Rams. It's kind of been kind of lopsided, and we'll get into it. That'll be part of our discussion when we get into storylines, Gilbert. But we have a full preview, as we always do. We'll have the latest news and notes plus storylines for both teams going into this matchup. And lastly, we will do our game predictions. But before we get to our game preview, Gilbert, what is your engagement question for our viewers and listeners?
Yeah, we always like to ask the question, what are the keys to the game here? So we're going to ask the viewers and listeners of House of Horns, what are the keys for the Rams victory here? Victory for the Seahawks, sorry, at the Seahawks. So Rams win versus the Seahawks. Let us know in the comments there. So, uh, you know, is it just being back at full strength, having Puka Nacua and Cooper Cup? You're feeling good. You're feeling okay about this matchup on the road in Seattle. And also keep in mind, Seattle has already lost home games to the 49ers, to the Giants, and to the Bills. So they're not that good at home anymore. And then I'm doing a betting column at SI for the week. If you're going to bet on this game, Geno Smith is 3-9 against the spread at home. So he's not good at home. He's not a good home quarterback, Geno Smith. So uh, maybe it's just that, you're catching the Seahawks on the road or at their house. So, or maybe you're thinking, you know what, let's see what Chris Shula could do. Can you do it again after shutting down Sam Darnold and Justin Jefferson in the second half of Thursday Night Football? So let us know what are your keys for this Rams game against the Seahawks here.
Yeah, and Chris Shula, I mean, you want to see him do it, be able to put a good game plan on the road. We've seen him do it at home now, for two straight games against the Raiders and the Vikings. And now going up to Seattle would be a good matchup, especially because we know what this offense for the Seahawks, can present for you. And there's a lot of challenges, and we'll get into it. But Gilbert, let's get into the Rams Seahawks news and notes plus injury report here. I'll start off with the Rams. Sean McVay told reporters last week that the team gave Tre'Davious White and his agent, they allowed them to explore the trade. White has been inactive for the past 3 games, Gilbert, and I wanted to. I The reason I brought this up, Gilbert, was because I read something by Jordan Rodriguez where, and I totally forgot about it, but they were supposed to take things slow with him, right? Because he was coming off
Mhm.
Achilles, and because of the injuries that happened, he was kind of pressed into the starting duty, and I just feel like I if you're Tre'Davious White, he's been a really good veteran leader in terms of getting benched and not making a big deal out of it. And also the Rams are good at keeping things, from getting out. And so for Sean McVay to bring this up, it also he wasn't supposed to be ready until November, it sounds like. So it'll be interesting to see whether they trade him or not. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on that and just with the whole Tre'Davious White and what you've seen so far.
Yeah, when he was out there in training camp, defending Cooper Cup and Puka Nacua and the 11 on 11 team drills, I'm like, oh, he must be way ahead of schedule. When I went out there a couple of times, it wasn't good, but I'm like, oh, he's going against Puka and Cooper Cup. That should be it, right? Not it's just practice against some very good star wide receivers. But it hasn't gotten better for him in the real games. It's good that he's ahead of schedule. It's good that he was staying healthy. He just wasn't a good player in those moments there. So, you had to do something. Sean McVay pulled him, and it worked out. It worked better for the whole team, and Kobe Durant, stepped up there to provide better coverage. So, maybe at first you had to do it because of Darion Kendrick injury. You're a little bit thin in the secondary with Darius Williams also being out. Darius Williams just came back. So you were able to tinker a little bit with the lineup, and the guy was hurting you, and he was just pretty much helping out any way that he can, and he should be applauded for that to get ready, have his body ready to at least contribute. It just didn't really work out, and maybe it's also hard, like to be benched like that when you are, I want to say, maybe a former All Pro, but definitely a Pro Bowler. So
Brian.
to take that and it definitely hurts you. So maybe they had to trade him, or maybe he could talk to Sean McVay and Chris Shula and say, "Hey, I'm okay with the benching. I'm gonna get better. Keep me around for the stretch run. I'll help you out in December. I'll help you out maybe in January, but I want to be part of this." So there's a lot of chatter behind the scenes, and one thing I do like about Sean McVay, he does tend to keep it, for the most part, honest when it comes to trade talks. And he's like, it happened with Cam Akers. Yeah, we're shopping Cam. Yeah, not anymore. We're gonna bring him back. So things like that do happen where guys do come back even though they're being shopped around. He even spoke about Ernest Jones today too, which was interesting. So
Yep.
yeah, it's definitely a unique dilemma. But right now he is not really helping the team, and the team is playing with better without him. But it doesn't hurt to have depth, and maybe now that he's had a couple of weeks off, he maybe he's better off for that.
Yeah, and then ever since Darius Williams came back, it feels like they kind of phased him out. But also at the same time, as you said, maybe they were just giving him some time to be able to, recover like he should have been, because he was pressed into action early on. Um, just kind of moving on here. Steve Avila, Jonah Jackson, and John Johnson the third will not practice this week, so they won't start their 21-day, thing to be able to be back from IR. And then last thing here in terms of news and notes, Matthew Stafford is 4-0 against the Seahawks since joining the Rams. Seattle won 2 games in 2022 versus the Rams, but they were quarterbacked by John Wolford and Baker Mayfield.
Mm.
So if Matthew Stafford's playing, they're undefeated. If it's
Wow.
another quarterback, they're 0-2. So yeah. And then let me just get through this injury report. There's not a lot to talk about with the Rams. Nose tackle Neville Gillimore, he did not practice, and then Sean McVay did say that Jordan Whittington, wide receiver Jordan Whittington, with a shoulder, and Joe Noteboom were. Oh, no, I'm sorry, and safety Cam Curl were going to be limited. So we'll see whether or not they play. And then Joe Noteboom was a full participant, but it doesn't sound like he might be active. Gilbert, it sounds like he's still about a week away. So maybe he plays against the Miami Dolphins, and then with the Seahawks. there's a couple names here that are are huge here in terms of that did not practice. DK Metcalf with the knee, he did not play last week against the Bills, but Coach Mike McDonald said that he expects him to. They're optimistic that he plays, but I never take anything that coaches say just because we've seen it where they say they're optimistic. It doesn't mean they're going to play. And then wide receiver Lavisca Chenault Jr. He did not also practice with the knee, and Devon Witherspoon with the foot did not practice, and Leonard Williams was a rest day defensive tackle. So anything that stands out to you from that injury report?
Yeah, definitely DK Metcalf and Devon Witherspoon with the foot injury and Metcalf with the knee injury. And that led to that beat that they got from the Buffalo Bills. This offense is not the same without DK Metcalf. Geno Smith really relies on DK Metcalf, and you know, Gino, for all his faults, he knows how to move the ball around. He knows how to push it down the field. He knows how to, get a lot of people involved. But you can't really do that without DK Metcalf when the defense is not focused on the physical specimen out there. Then you could just go in and cover Tyler Lockett and Jackson Smith and Jigba. Those are good wide receivers, but they're not DK Metcalf. Like, yeah, Metcalf could go quiet every now and then, but just his presence being there really opens it up for everybody there. So yeah, this push the ball down the field for Ryan Grubb, the new OC in Seattle, doesn't really work like that. So it's difficult, especially you have to go face. If you find yourself in a shootout with Stafford, Puka, and Cooper Cup, then you better have your big receivers too, and they might not. We'll see what the injury is. I think there was maybe some hope that he will play. So maybe this week the odds increase, but you don't know. And then Witherspoon's their best cornerback, so that could definitely hurt them, especially in a week they're facing Puka and Cooper Cup, which again it's good for the Rams with having those wide receivers back. It changes the way we talk about games like that.
Yeah.
They need those two guys there to keep pace here.
Yeah, I'm with you in terms of we saw we'll get into the two teams here, but I thought not having DK Metcalf, you can tell that the Bills kind of took away their ability to let the other two receivers kind of beat them. And yeah, the running game for the Seahawks has been a problem. But I wanted to get to a comment here from Michael Armenta. He missed the show, our post game show, so he's in here now for our preview show. Here, he's "What's happening, compas?"
What's up,
And then
Michael?
"What's going on, Michael?" And he says, "Kyron will feast on the Seahawks." So
Yeah,
we'll get into it. That
touchdown
actually,
machine.
yes. I mean, what is it? 10 straight games now? Is it 9 or 10? I forget. That he
I
scored
lost
a
track.
touchdown. Yeah.
I forgot, but it's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. So let's get to the Rams and Seahawks storylines, and I want to start off with Seattle. Seattle made changes during the offseason, Gilbert, to compete with the Rams and the 49ers. They fired Pete Carroll because he didn't believe he because the franchise didn't believe that he could beat McVay and Shanahan. Seahawks hired Mike McDonald to end the dominance by McVay and Shanahan that they've had over the Seahawks. So I guess let's start off with just what the Seahawks are trying to do and what they're building here in terms of they know that the two guys that you need to beat here are Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan, and so um, can Mike McDonald be the guy to end the McVay dominance over the Seahawks?
Well, first of all, I just realized maybe it's not a good day to put on my Kraken hat because they're playing the Seattle Seahawks. But
Yeah,
Seattle's is a good town. I support that city. I always have a good time there. But obviously, don't look too deep into that. Maybe we'll get a couple of Seahawks supporters watching this YouTube video,
yeah.
and they're probably, oh, look, we got a Kraken hat there, so maybe they'll stick around. I'm gonna lure them to watch more and get more views here. But it happened. It worked with our friend from Detroit, the Lions fan there. So
Oh, that's right.
we get opposing fans subscribing here for the channel House of Horns. But uh, yeah, when they hired Mike McDonald, I thought it was a good hire because you know obviously you got Shanahan and Sean McVay leading the charge there for offensive geniuses, and maybe you want to counter with the good defensive mind there. Mike McDonald did a good job building that Ravens defense. The Ravens defense definitely misses him this year. They're not a good defense this year. they might be
Yeah.
the worst passing defense in the NFL, and that's why the Ravens had to score a lot of points there to make up for that. But uh, I've seen flashes of Mike McDonald's scheme really helping out the Seahawks, but it's been very difficult with all the injuries. And then
Hmm.
one thing that's really weird with this transition too, talking about Pete Carroll and moving on. Like in 2022, they kind of stumbled in this quick fix after the Russell Wilson trade. Like, hey, Geno Smith actually is a good quarterback. He's not, maybe not going to win you a Super Bowl, but he's good enough to get you to the playoffs. Maybe not enough to beat the 49ers. They can't beat the 49ers. Every time they play them, they're pretty bad. But they thought, okay, why not keep building here? You hit on DK Metcalf. They traded for Leonard Williams. They got Devon Witherspoon in the Russell Wilson trade. They seem to found something in Rick Woolen, who was a very good rookie. Hasn't been as good since that rookie year. So they
Yeah.
kind of went all in with this roster here, and it seems like they just seem like a wild card team. Do you want to keep doing this over and over again with Geno Smith and try something different with the new coaching staff and see if he could work with these players? Because on paper, Victor, you look at the roster, it's stacked with a lot of good players. Pro bowlers, high drafted players, and on both sides there. So, but some of these players haven't really lived up to expectations. Jackson Smith and Jigba hasn't been as good as I thought he was going to be. Even like I mentioned, Rick Williams has been up and down. They can't find good linebackers. The run defense is always pretty bad. Byron Murphy the second has shown flashes up in the middle there, the rookie, but he's also been hurt. Leonard Williams has been hurt. Chandler Uso has been hurt. So a lot of injuries on this star-studded roster. But say they are healthy, is it really gonna do anything against the Lions? Is it gonna finally beat the 49ers? Is it good enough for that? Are you good enough to get far in the postseason? So I keep going back to Seattle being a little fraudulent because they started out 3-0. They have an attractive roster, but they don't seem to put it together. And maybe that's not Mike McDonald's fault. That's more the Pete Carroll era. But these injuries have really been holding them back. And then, like I mentioned, you lost at home to the Giants, you lost at home to the Bills, to 49ers. So you're even losing that 12th man element there in Seattle. So, yeah, they're still okay. They're 4-4. But this is not a team. If you're asking me, maybe you could do a segment on Compass and the Beat trending in the right direction or in the bad direction. I think they're trending in the wrong direction.
Yeah, and I think part of it too is, when you're kind of starting over, Gilbert, you want to do it with the GM and a coach, and they let John Snyder kind of pick the coach here, which isn't a problem, but he's the one bringing in the talent, and so sometimes there can be a problem there. Also, I understood why they went and got him too, Gilbert. You had you had the Ravens beat up on the 49ers last year and Kyle Shanahan when he was the defensive coordinator, and then they played really well against Sean McVay. So I understood the hire here. It's gonna take a couple, years to, get his defense. The same thing happened with the Ravens where, they were able to trade for their linebacker, Roquan Smith, and then they drafted Kyle Hamilton, and then, so it's gonna take a little bit of time. Matabuki took a little bit of time, but once he was able to um get his hands on him and be able to develop him, he finally took off because the first 2 years, Matabuki was someone that was turned a bust, and so
Hmm.
yeah, like having Byron Murphy is going to help them, Leonard Williams, and as you talked about, the what's been, I think part of the problem for them has been injuries, and you never want to make any excuses because we know that injuries are going to happen, but that's been a lot of the things with this team so far with the defense. But they have, as you said, they have talent on this team. It's just putting it all together, and I just feel like it's gonna take a couple of years. And you've always made the point that you're either you don't want to be in the middle. You wanna if you're gonna do the whole rebuild, do it, or else you're just gonna be stuck in mediocrity. And Mike McDonald can, either elevate this team or they, as you said, they just need to do the full reset, and you can do it because, um, you have a Geno Smith who you don't, this is a quarterback that was here under the old regime. So you can go ahead and bring in your own guys. So I'm with you. I think they need to figure out by the end of the season whether or not they want to do the whole rebuild or they want to stay in the middle there.
Yeah, they could definitely get out of Geno Smith's contract, and it's not always his fault. They can't fix that run defense either. But the thing that kind of gets them in trouble is like they again, you look at the roster and like it looks better than what the Steelers have, another kind of good mediocre team. But you know you start thinking to yourself like, "Hey, maybe we could get something going here." And I think that's why they wanted to give it a chance with Mike McDonald. Maybe he's the one to bring all these stars together defensively because, I'm not. Maybe I could probably say this. Maybe the talent and the names that they have on the Seahawks roster is better than what the 49ers have. They have Nick Bosa and Fred Warner. I give them that, the two best players. But after that, it's not much step there. But sometimes coaching matters. Sometimes
Um,
complementary football matters. Sometimes when you have CMC and George Kittle and those guys, that all plays together. And the Seahawks do have the names, but they don't play together. They don't have collective units. They don't even defensively, even in the phases, they don't play together. So when you handle the phases of the three phases of football, then you start playing together as one big team. But they haven't been doing it, and that's the problem. Like you look at the roster, maybe you win 10 games and you get to the playoffs and you start thinking, yeah, let's keep doing it. Maybe one of these years we're going to open that door and crack through. That's what the Cowboys keep thinking, and it just never happens. But uh, the Cowboys have a mess because they paid a bunch of people. The Seahawks haven't paid a lot of people. Maybe, I guess, Leonard Williams, and that's about it. But other than that, you could definitely rebuild.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what this team does going forward, whether they win on Sunday or they lose, or and then going forward, what they decide to do because they have a lot of question marks. And like I said, I mean, sometimes one of the things that happens a lot with these teams is that they get instant success, kind of like they made the playoffs after in a couple years ago, and then everybody just picked them to maybe beat the 49ers and has it and they fell flat, and then they end up firing Pete Carroll, and now it's like, are you gonna commit to rebuilding this team, or are you just wanting to be a fringe team that gets into the playoffs and then that's it? Because if you really want to compete against the Rams and the 49ers going forward, you're going to have to rebuild this team. But, it'll be interesting to see what they do. Gilbert, before we move on here to talk about the offense now, Mike Armenta says, I agree. Geno Smith is a solid journeyman quarterback, but he will not get you to the promised land. And
Yeah,
he's been good, but he just his offensive line continues to
that's it.
let him down. And then one more thing here, any word on Higby? I haven't heard anything saying. I mean, I think we won't probably if we hear anything about him, it'll either be late November, early December. Gilbert.
Yeah, and then when he starts to practice, it might take a while too. You don't want to rush him back. Obviously, we saw what happened with Tre'Davious White. So, maybe somebody you wait on for maybe a playoff or the last couple months in December. But yes, it takes time with that kind of injury.
Yeah, and we just saw TJ Hawkinson finally was
Yeah,
clear this week. So if you want to see what the path is to get back Tyler Higbee, just look at what happened with TJ Hawkinson. They made sure he was ready to go. So and he was injured way before Tyler Higbee. So yeah, you just look at the same timeline there, and I think you're looking at, like I said, sometime in late November, early December you will start hearing something about Tyler Higbee, perhaps, starting to, practice again. Gilbert, just kind of switching over to the offense here with the with the Seahawks. Offensively, they've actually been worse, Gilbert, believe it or not, than they were under Shane Waldron, who left during the offseason to be the offensive coordinator with the Bears. Um, so they hire Ryan Grubb, who's the OC with the Washington Huskies, and he was really good with the Washington Huskies. We saw they were a great offensive team, and they made it all the way to the national championship and lost to Michigan. But the problem, Gilbert, even though they brought in offensive linemen which has been a problem for them. Their running game is still non-existent with Kenneth Walker and Zach Sherman. So why hasn't the Seahawks offense clicked under new offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb?
Yeah, it's been a weird season. Like when Kenneth Walker is doing well, it's just Kenneth Walker doing well. When DK Metcalf is doing well, it's just DK Metcalf doing well. They don't really, again, they don't play as a unit. They don't play together. They don't have like these, dominant games where you see, oh, look at in Jigba, look at Tyler Lockett, look at Zach Charbonnet helping out Kenneth Walker. And maybe that's part of the problem with the offensive line. Offensive line, when you have a good offensive line, that's when things usually work together. So when you have a terrible offensive line, usually it goes the other way. So Geno Smith, he has some ability. He's able to move around. He's able to extend plays. He's able to avoid pressure. But that's the problem too when he's trying to look down the field. He has a lot of interceptions too. So turnovers, not much of a balance there. And again, it can either be the passing attack or just a running attack. They don't play together. And I have Kenneth Walker in fantasy. He's my only good player, so he's he's decent. But again, when you watch him, it's like he's doing all the work. So they're a weird team. But again, you look at the roster like that, it looks like a good roster, and they don't do it. And I'm trying to give Mike McDonald an excuse on defense because they have a lot of injuries. But what's the excuse of the offense there?
Yeah.
So maybe it's just poor offensive line play. Maybe you need to rebuild the offensive line. Uh, One of the picks they used on the Russell Wilson trade was Charles Cross. I think he was a top 10 pick, and he hasn't really done
Yeah,
much, I
he's a
guess.
great pass blocker, but he can run block, and that's part of the
Yeah,
problem.
when you're a top 10 pick tackle, you better do both pretty well. But I know they need him. He'll also been dealing with injuries. The entire O line, like the from after Cross, is definitely it gets worse. So, uh, yeah, we all know that if an O line is not doing well, that usually means the whole entire offense is not doing well.
Yeah, and just kind of listening to people in and around the Seahawks. The big thing for them is the fact that it's just the offensive line is not well coached. They're not opening up holes for, like, it's not well schemed. They're getting beat. They're not making the adjustments. Another thing was against the Bills. The Bills pretty much took away and Jigba and Tyler Lockett, and they forced them to run the ball. And um, they would the thing that the Bills would do was they would go on one side of the ball, and then Geno Smith and that offensive line just didn't make the adjustments. And I know one of the 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 offensive linemen that they brought in was, I think, Connor Williams, the center. He's just hasn't been good for them, and he's gotten a lot of the criticism from Seahawks fans. So a lot of it has to do with that too, Gilbert, is the fact that I've been a big proponent of bringing in offensive coordinators from the college level, but Ryan Grubb just hasn't made the adjustment to the pros, and I think he's having a hard time, um, being able to out scheme some of these defensive coordinators. And as I said, right now the defensive coordinators around the league are really good. I mean, they have a step ahead on some of these offensive coordinators, and yeah, you have to evolve and you have to be able to make the adjustments. And Ryan Grubb has really struggled with that.
Yeah, sometimes football is not that complicated. It's all about the fundamentals and the foundation. And when you look at all the good teams in the NFL, they have a couple things. They have a good offensive line and they know how to run the football. Look at the Lions. Once they have those two
Hmm.
things down, everything opens up and it explodes there for the passing game. So I think that's where Ryan Grubb and Mike McDonald need to focus on it for the future is to build those two areas, with the offensive line. And then be a little more consistent with the running game. I do like the Kenneth Walker. I'm not too sold on Zach Charbonnet. When he had his moments, he's kind of been so-so. But uh, find a way to get both involved, kind of like Blake Corum and Connor Williams. Like the Rams haven't done that either. But when you have two, obviously two is better than one. But it starts with the offensive line.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Now let's move on to the Rams, Gilbert, and you talked about it. Sean McVay brought up Ernest Jones, and he had a lengthy quote. About Ernest Jones here. He said, I've been pleased with some of the things that guys have done. It'd be hard to deny the production that he's had when you look at what he's done at Tennessee. And even just in the first week there, last week with Seattle, he's a great player and he did a lot of good things for us. I think all the decisions that we make in the moment we feel like are in the best interest. I'm not going to pretend to act like every decision is accurate. You don't try, and you try to be able to learn from it and apply it moving forward. But you know that you're playing against a really respected player, mentally, physically tough. Seems like he's always around the football. So I wish him well. It's going to be a great challenge going up against him. So just wanted to get your thoughts in terms of what he had to say there, Gilbert.
Yeah, it sounds like a coach who had to lose one to the GM. So sometimes you don't think you're not totally in line with the GM, and the coach and the GM don't have to agree on everything. Sometimes you got to say, "Well, this is my job. I don't tell you how to set the lineup on Sunday." So maybe that's what happened there. Obviously, we all know about the contract situation with Ernest Jones being a free agent, and yeah, maybe Sean McVay wanted the guy right now, worry about the rest later, and Leslie didn't want to deal with it. Again, I'm just just trying to figure out what's going on here. It sounded like Sean McVay was saying like, yeah, that wasn't a good one there. But he kept saying, team, and sometimes we got to learn from it. He wasn't trying to point the blame at anybody. So I don't think that's one battle he's really stuck on and really upset about. But Ernest Jones is definitely an interesting dilemma because part of it is like, man, this guy's been traded twice in the last 2 months. Like, are we missing something? Is he not a player you want to commit to?
Yeah.
But then he goes to Seattle, and the Seahawks saw him up close. They probably talked to Bobby Wagner, who's really close with Ernest Jones, and Bobby Wagner definitely probably had good things to say about Ernest Jones. So when they made that deal, I'm like, okay, I can see why they made a deal for Ernest Jones. And there are reports saying that they're willing to make him part of the future, especially if he's able to fix a running game there. So it is a big tryout for Ernest Jones out playing for a contract. He didn't get it with the Rams. It didn't work out for him with the Titans because, the Titans viewed him as a player to help him out. Like, let's not forget that because they spent a lot of money in the offseason to get, guys like L'Jarius Sneed, Calvin Ridley, Tony Pollard, Lloyd Cushenberry, the third. And they even drafted a left tackle in JC Latham. They were trying to win. They thought Ernest Jones would be the final piece to help them be a sleeper team, and it just wasn't the case. So, luckily for him, he got an opportunity to go somewhere else to showcase himself. But it's just kind of weird. Like, two teams gave up on you. What's the red flag there? But when you look at the situation, you look at the contract, you look at the bad team that he went to, it makes sense. But I think it really helps out that Seattle knew him very well from those Rams days. It says a lot that the team wanted to bring him back to the division. So he could maybe help out there. He definitely would have helped out the Rams. We've been talking about that at House of Horns. I'm just trying to look at it more of an Ernest Jones perspective. Like, is he a really good player? Is he worth that contract? And I think him going to Seattle says that, yeah, he could definitely be that player you pay. But we don't know how much money he's going to get. And also,
Right.
yeah, you're still auditioning for Seattle. So if you're not able to help out in Mike McDonald's scheme, you're not going to get it there either. So it's just weird how this thing played out where, like, he wanted a contract. A day later, he's gone, goes to Tennessee, goes to Seattle, now playing the Rams in Seattle. So it's a very weird kind of U-turn for him.
Yeah, and then he's gonna get to play 2 games against the Rams. When the Rams, you could have kept them, you could have used them this season, and I don't want to be. I know we've got some flack here for being a bit negative, but at the same time, Gilbert, you have to be honest in terms like everybody can see the fact that the linebackers haven't been good this season for the Rams, and I understand that the Rams don't believe in paying a linebacker. We've seen it throughout history. If you go back and whether it was Ogletree, whether it was other guys beforehand, I'm trying to think of the linebacker that the Raiders signed to a big contract, who was an undrafted guy by the Rams.
Littleton, I forget.
Yeah, Leonard Little, or
No,
no,
but I
there
forgot.
was a
Yeah,
line. Yeah, it was,
something
yeah,
like that.
Littleton. It was Littleton. And so we know that we understand that they're not going to pay. I think where I kind of start to get a little bit worried because we know they're not going to pay for a running back either. So then you start to think about Kyron Williams and you start looking at some of these positions and you're like, okay, if you're not going to take care of some of these positions, then you're kind of you're having holes, and that's where things come in. I think that's been the biggest frustration this season for Ram fans. But kind of to have a question here, Gilbert, will the Rams be looking for help on defense before the trade deadline? Because that quote by Sean McVay and the way you phrased it there too, with what you said, makes me think that isn't happy about what happened with Ernest Jones, and maybe he's kind of pushing to go ahead and get some linebacker help or help the defense out.
Speaking of Kyron Williams, that could be a good discussion in the future, but it helps out a lot that he's still producing and balling while staying healthy. When everybody got hurt, he was healthy, so I could
Yeah.
definitely make the big difference for him. And I wonder how that's going to play out. He has one more year after this season, but maybe they pay the guy early because he's been doing so well. But yeah, that would be another conversation. But we had a story at SI, me and my colleague, about one trade that every team should make in the NFL, and a little fun exercise before the trade deadline. And I started looking at who could be an available linebacker. There's not too many because as we know, teams are shifting away a little bit from linebackers. They're making a little bit of a comeback, but it's not to the point where there's a bunch of big names out there for a
Right.
linebacker. And I said, call up the New Orleans Saints, do them a favor and let them start tearing that roster because they never do it. But trade like a late pick for Demario Davis and the linebacker there for the Saints there. He's not
Hmm.
having the best season, but it's been a terrible year all around. When you're having a terrible season where the offense is not scoring points, you have Spencer Rattler out there. That tends to also frustrate the defense, and you have a lot of let up games there. So, Demario Davis just got an extension from the Saints in March, so that tells you he was playing at a high level. Maybe the Saints want to get out of that contract, and maybe the Rams have cap space. Maybe they want to make a deal where, hey, you eat some of the money, we'll give you kind of a late pick. And by the way, when we wrote that story, people are like, what are you guys talking about? All these star players for seventh round picks? That's terrible. I'm like, do you guys not
Yeah.
look at the trades that happen? Everybody's getting a sixth pick or a seventh pick. It's rare when you get a fifth pick. The Cam Robinson barely got a conditional fifth round pick from the Vikings. So you have to earn that fifth round pick. Teams don't give up on picks that are higher in the fourth round. Like, it just doesn't happen in the NFL because players get old, contract situations matter, situations on the roster matter. So and so the point is, Demario Davis is a good player, and people are probably laughing because I put maybe a fifth round pick for the Rams to get him, but he has a massive contract. He's still a good player, so things have to be worked out. So that was just one example, but I think the Rams should definitely go and get a defensive upgrade at linebacker. I like what I've been seeing from the secondary. They've gotten better since
Oh
all
yeah.
these tweaks here, and the defensive front is coming alive. They're finally getting better, through every kind of phase. From like, okay, you're getting pressure. Oh, now you're being consistent with the pressure. Oh, your run defense is getting better. You're working off the edges too, and then now you're making game changing plays, sacks, turnovers, things like that. So you're okay in those these two areas. It's just that linebacker group is a big concern. So they should make a move there. So obviously, there's more options than just a linebacker. Maybe you get a linebacker who's not a big name like the Mario Davis, and it costs you just a 7th round pick and no money. If you trust your scouting department, your pro scouts, go ahead and do it. It's maybe an underrated player to go get out there. So it definitely help out there. Offensively, obviously, you're waiting for Jonah Jackson and Steve Avila, and you're pretty much set. But linebacker is the one that's screaming for help there, and they should do something.
Yeah, I'll give you a name right now, and they just played 2 weeks ago, and that's Raiders middle linebacker Robert Spillane.
I
He's
was gonna say that, but he got hurt. No,
No, not from maybe I didn't see, but I thought he played well against the Chiefs, but you could be right. I
he
haven't
he
checked
might
the
have
injury.
came out, and I got scared because I saw an injury. That's a good point. I was really gonna put him on there.
Yeah, that's someone that kind of he's on his last year of his contract, and I just don't see them re-signing him. They're kind of like as we talked about with linebackers, especially. I think they have like 9 linebackers on that team, so and they're not going anywhere. They might as well try to get as you said, even a sixth or a 7th round pick for him if he's not going to be back. Um, but before we move on here, Gilbert, we have Boltillo here. I think he's on the wrong channel. He's like, "Where's my glory?" Is King Dan? What's up, Bolts is coming up later. I think they're on at 7:30, I believe. So make sure you go and check that out. Delver says, "What's up, compas? Just joining in. Let's stay on track. Rams run the division one down at a time." And then Michael Armenta says, "In my view, Shula got some redemption with that last game. I hope the defense continues with that type of play." And then
Yeah.
lastly, Gilbert, just with the start. Oh, you were gonna?
I was
You
gonna
were
say,
you?
Portillo, just stick around for another 40 minutes, like it, and keep watching. Then you'll see what's up both here on the channel. And real quick, Victor, yes, Spillane did have a knee injury or a leg injury, but
Mm.
he was held out of practice on Wednesday. But I guess apparently people are surprised that he's even at Raiders practice because the injury looked pretty bad. So
Oh, there you go.
that's still an option for the Rams. He's available soon.
Yeah, he would be a good get for them. He's a really good run stopper. His thing was that he couldn't cover, but he led the team last year in interceptions. So the guy can would be a good asset for the Rams. You brought up the playmakers, and I just wanted to touch on this just because the Puka, Puka and Cooper were back healthy. Now, they're going to the second straight game, and we don't know, as you talked about earlier, we don't know when Steve Avila and Jonah Jackson will be back. You have center Bo Limmer and Justin Diedich. I'm saying that guard have not given up a sack in a combined 283 blocking snaps so far this season, and then the last two games, both of those guys have started together. Stafford has only been sacked once in those two games, so I guess have the Rams fixed their issues on offense with the return of Puka and Cup.
Yeah, and we saw there against the Vikings. Obviously, you're much better with those two offensive linemen there, and it's going to help you out in many ways there. But you know, it, we saw it last year too. The point of getting Jonah Jackson is to get better from the year before. So this offensive line is supposed to get better when those guys come back. So yeah, Avila was still part of that last year, but it just felt like the second half Rams offense, like with that Minnesota game. I know it's one game, but there's enough of a sample size to know when Puka's there and Cooper Cup's there, this is a good offense. So yeah, I think the fix for issues they'll be much better after what week 10 when those guys come back or whatever week it is. Yeah, in week 10, hopefully they come back. Those two
Mhm.
linemen right there, but yeah, they're trending in the right direction. That's a good offense. Even Stafford plays better. Uh, even Kyron Williams contributed, even though they were throwing the football pretty heavily. Got 97 rushing yards there against the Vikings. So we know this offense knows how to put it together. You know how we're saying with the Seahawks, they don't know how to play as a unit. This
Yeah.
it's not a problem in LA. These Rams know how to play. They know how to all contribute. They know how to eat together. Kyrie knows how to run and get touchdowns. Cooper Cup and I know Cooper Cup and Puka also. Puka takes a lot of the targets from Cooper Cup, but I think Cooper Cup has done a good job in those games that he's played to contribute. Starting with that Lions game in Week 1, he filled in for Puka, but we got to see a little more of them together on the field, contributing at a high level. That's something maybe if I'm nitpicking, that's probably the last thing I want to see here because Puka just dominates the passing game now. But you're going to be just fine with all those players healthy.
Yeah, and I agree. I think the last part of this offense that needs to kind of get going is their tight ends.
Yeah.
It's been kind of up and down so far. You want to see a little bit more consistency from that group, but I'm with you. I mean, you can see the chemistry that's there between Puka, Cooper, and Matthew Stafford, and it was nice to see Tutu Adwell contribute as well. It's hard for him to do so with when you have those three other guys, and then Demarcus Robinson fitting back into the role that he's supposed to be playing, and he felt right at home with those two touchdowns. He only had two catches against the Vikings, and both of them went for touchdowns. So, and you were able to interview him. He was he was happy to have those two guys back because it makes his job easier. But yeah, I think that's going to be a big thing here. A big key for this game is going to be how that offense does against that Seahawks defense, because if you're able to run the ball, those two guys are going to eat between Puka and Cooper Cup. I think they might have big games. And if I remember right, Gilbert, last last season they opened the season against the Seahawks.
Yeah.
Tutu Adwell and Puka Nacua both went over 100 yards. So I expect two receivers in this game to go over 100 yards just because they're able to move the ball with those, especially the way McVay can scheme up things for those receivers.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. When Puka and Cooper Cup are on the field, I think the other wide receivers also find ways to contribute. I know Tutu only had one catch in that Vikings game, but it was a big time catch. I remember that one being pretty impactful in that drive there. So it's good for everybody.
Yeah. All right, Gilbert. The Rams are 1.5 point, 1.5 point favorites. The over under is 48. When I saw this line earlier in the week, it was at 2 and it was 48.5. So the both the lines have come down. I don't know if it's something to do with the weather, but it's been betted down to 1.5. It started at 2, and then it's been betted down from 48.5 to 48. What's the right side of this line here, Gilbert?
Yeah, definitely. The Rams being a road favorite in Seattle, it's a little surprising, but not really when you consider how poorly these Seahawks have played at home. And I gave you guys the stats earlier about Geno Smith being 9-3 the last 2 seasons against the spread when playing at home. He just hasn't been doing well at home. For that's it's kind of strange there. Um, so definitely the Rams here. I know we kind of give ourselves away by saying that, but definitely, it's okay. It's not even that big of a spread, 1.5 there. And I know home teams tend to do better, but this season a lot of road teams have been winning and covering too as well. So that's the thing about the NFL; it's very unpredictable. So it should be a good game. So I don't want to say it's an obvious one here. But and then the over under, maybe because they know these teams know each other, maybe it could be under here. Uh, they both had good offenses, but are we ready to say the Seahawks are going to put it together with DK Metcalf? Probably not. So I think I'd rather side with Chris Shula's defense here. So I could see maybe an under here. I don't feel good about it, but I could see an under.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that kind of hesitates me about both of these lines, Gilbert, is the fact that I haven't seen the Rams play well on the road. That's my only hesitation here. I
Yeah.
want to be completely
Chicago,
honest here.
Arizona, Detroit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, they got blown out. I mean, they played well against all the good teams at home. Even against the Packers, they played well. I want to see this team play well against on the road. So that's my only hesitation here in terms of I'm a little, scared of that line at 1.5. That would be my only things if we're talking about the betting, where I'm at with the in terms of betting here. And I'm with you. I might take the under in this game just because we know how things can be in Seattle. It could be raining, it could be a wet game. You just never know. The wind could take over, the fans can take over. You never know, but it's always a wild card whenever you have to go up to Seattle. But all right, Gilbert, let's get to our game predictions. I'll let you start. Where are you going here with this matchup?
Yeah. I did go back and forth a little bit because anytime I see a home underdog that's as talented as the Seahawks, I'm gonna give it some thought. But it's like I've been down this road with Seattle to try to, I know I didn't do it, but some people took them in the points against the Bills, and they regretted it, and they got beat down. They did cover against the Falcons, but that was on the road. They're just not
Yeah,
a good team at home this year. So I think that they had kind of a sluggish game against the Broncos. I think in Week 1 at home, they did beat the Dolphins, but that was without Tua. So uh, considering all that, they're just not a good dog, or at least a consistent dog. They're hard to trust, and that's why I call them frauds. I know it's a little harsh there, but from all the teams they're from the NFC West. They're the ones I like them. I guess I like the least for sure.
yeah,
Maybe people won't like this one, but I still give the 49ers the benefit of the doubt. They're starting to get healthy. They have experience. It's still everybody's 4-4. So I'll give it to the 49ers number one right now. And then again, going back to the experience, I'll give it to the Rams number two. And then my pesky Cardinals number three, and then the Seahawks number four. So it's a long way to give an answer. I'm trying to make this game a little close. And I think it will be close, but I will take the Rams and the points here. And I went the under. So it could be like something funky. I'll give it like 24-22 Rams, and that's what 48 points. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, like I said, I think the only concern I have is that, as you said, both of these teams, the Seahawks play better on the road, but they struggle at home. And I'm still trying to see whether or not the Rams play really good on the road. I still haven't seen a good game from them on the road outside of they kept it close against the Lions, and so that was the last time they were healthy. So because of that, that was the last time they were healthy, and now they're starting to get healthy. I'm with you. I'm going with the Rams here. I just think it's going to be a close game. It's going to be somewhere between like a 20-17 game, a 25-20 game, somewhere in that vicinity. I just think like the Rams will cover, but it's because that line is 1.5. I just think it's going to be a close game, though. It will be is, and as I've said too, with divisional games, they're always close. It just that's the way it is because these teams know each other really well, and yeah, and having to go up there to Seattle, I as you said, they've lost 3 games, but it's a divisional game, man. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
There, yeah, we can say, well, that'll be different this week. It's just the way with division. We just saw it last week with the Ravens and the Browns. Some of these teams just play well against each other in division games, and it doesn't matter what the record is. We have Mike Guadamenta here. He's giving his score. He thinks it's going to be a blowout. He's got the Rams
Oh,
34-17 over the Seahawks. So,
wow.
yeah, Gilbert. Yeah, things are starting to look up for this Rams team. Only 4 players on the injury report, which is good. Um, and now they have a chance to string along now, just kind of like what they did, coming off a bye last season, where they win 7 of 8 wins. They can do the same thing, and I saw Sean McVay get asked about it, and he gave that answer where it's you're kind of just going one game at a time right now, and that's the right way to go about it. But yeah, you're starting to see why this team was picked to make the playoffs, and if they can just stay healthy, they can do that, and they can continue on with the win over the Seahawks on Sunday.
Yeah, this NFC West is it's a wide open race, but it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And if you would have, if somebody would have said, maybe like me, would have said the Cardinals would be in first place because they're leading all the tiebreakers. They're in first place
Yeah,
technically on November 1st, which is in a couple of days. Maybe you would have laughed at me. People just don't
yeah,
know. If you would have said the Seahawks or 4-4 after starting 3-0, you would have laughed at me too. If I
yeah.
would have said the 49ers are going to be 4-4, you probably would have laughed at me. If I said the Rams would be 3-4, you probably would have laughed. And then uh, maybe some things don't even change. It could probably be 49ers and the Rams battling it out by December. So that's the thing about the NFL. Yeah, you think you have it figured out by in a 2 week stretch when you really don't. A couple of weeks later, so it's a wide open race and it's a fascinating race in the NFC West.
Yeah, and it might only get one team in, and so it'll be we'll see what happens the rest of the way. But as we said, with this game, I think it's a big game for both teams because it's kind of a measuring stick of where they're at, and yeah, I can't wait for Sunday because we'll find out where both of these teams are at, and it'll either be, as you said, the Seahawks will continue to be frauds in your mind there, Gilbert, and the Rams will continue to kind of forge forward and get closer to being in the division to compete for the division title.
Yeah. All right, that was a good show here at House of Horns, breaking down Seahawks and the Rams. It's time to get going. We got a Dodger game to watch, but I also know we gotta also stay tuned for What's Up Boats. If you want to watch the preview about the Chargers and who are they playing already? Oh, the Browns. The Browns. There you go.
The Browns.
Chargers at the Browns. That could be an interesting game there. So stick around here to Compass on the Beat and have the Dodger game on the background like Victor does right now. So hopefully it's a good night. If not, then they'll do it again on Friday. And we'll see everybody here on Sunday for the recap around 5 p.m., maybe 4:45 ish. We'll see. But it's time to get going here. On that note, ya nos vamos. Pues vámonos.